Unfortunately, as a guy on your screen, I only exist from one dimension. I don't have a back view. Your characters don't need to suffer the same fate. Character turns, or character sheets, are a big part of the character design process. They're especially helpful for handing a design over to an animator or a 3D modeler. I'm going to show you how to make them and also why you shouldn't. Wait, what? So the advice isn't to avoid character turns, but to not rush to them too quickly. The act of creating a character turn is inherently a sterilizing, finalizing process, as we'll see. By trying to make sure everything matches from every angle, you're being deliberate and final. That leaves no room for iteration, exaggeration, playing with the shapes and silhouettes, and seeing if the character moves and poses well. That's why you won't find character designers immediately sitting down with 4 labeled columns and building their characters from every angle. Instead, you're going to see loose sketches, little changes, big misses, and eventually something interesting and compelling. Especially for more stylized characters, I would prioritize exploring the character first instead. Once you have a design you're happy with, try to draw a few expressions and poses. Really try to move them around and even break them. In fact, those key poses that give a sense of personality and who a character is, various expressions, those should all be part of a character sheet as well. Okay, with that out of the way, here is the collar to Jacqueline's vest. In basic terms, it's a cylinder. So how do we view it from the front, side, and 3/4 view? Well, even with things in a simple character like this being abstract, we're pulling from real life. So the collar area where the neck meets the torso isn't flat, it's actually angled down. This means that we can see the top of this cylinder from the front, and if the rest of the torso wasn't there, we could see the bottom of it from the back. The way this translates is to us drawing these U-shaped lines to define the collar in the front, and then upside down U-shaped lines to define it in the back. Meanwhile, from the side, it's that diagonal shape like we said, sloping downwards. When we talk about constructed forms, that interior U-shaped line might not define the silhouette of a shape, but it defines the 3D information about the shape. Figuring out the orientation of the basic shapes that your character is comprised of will make or break your character turns. Drawing a straight line that should be curved or having it go in the wrong direction will break the dimensionality of it. And that sounds harsh, but it's actually great practice if you intend to draw and redraw this character a lot. On the other hand, if something doesn't make sense and you hand it off to a 3D modeler, let's say, you're going to get some questions from them, or the character isn't going to turn out the way you hoped they would in your mind. Most characters tend to be comprised of these basic 3D shapes: boxes, cylinders, and spheres. Understanding these basic shapes in your characters is a great way to know how to turn them around. It makes for good reference points for the more detailed or complex pieces of the design as well. Some parts of a design will just look wildly different from different angles, or may not appear on the sheet as we expect if we aren't familiar with things like anatomy. For example, the eyes are recessed into the head by the sockets and won't be on the surface of the face in most designs. Instead of looking like an oval from the side, you'll get this triangular wedge shape for the eye that comes from the lids. Remember that arms and legs aren't perfectly straight either. In human anatomy, there's some natural curvature. Using some simple gesture, aided by the simple cylinders of the arms and legs, we'll get natural-looking limbs. On most character turnarounds, certain bits of characters are parted out. This might mean omitting the arm from a side view of the character so that the body can be seen clearly. You can simply draw the arm off to the side. The same can be done with big, long hair like this that's covering our view of the neck and shoulders from behind. If we're doing our character turns right, one of the most useful tools will be horizontal lines. If a nose, for example, is one height in the front, it will be the same on the side. Using horizontal lines like this is a great way to check consistency across your characters. You might make a visual block that's maybe the height of your character's head if you want to. But remember, if you're measuring the height of the chin in the front view, the neck in the side view will actually start higher than the chin. So because of those diagonal angles and things not being uniform from all sides, you'll need to double check things like this. When drawing the front and back views of a character, feel free to use a symmetry tool if your drawing program, like Procreate, has one, at least for elements that are the same on both sides. What's great about this is that the silhouette is the same for both the front and the back. Be careful though, because the same things that we talked about with the collar apply here. Most curved lines will resolve the opposite way on the back view of a character, unless they're perfectly straight. This includes the belt line, shoes, and even the angle of the elbow. For your 3/4 view, depending on the perspective that you draw it in, you may not line up the front, side, and back views perfectly. It's fine if it doesn't, but if you want it to, you'll need to keep the character's feet flat and in the same perspective as those other turns. If you're looking at the character from the top down ever so slightly, it's now a different perspective. Some like to draw turnarounds with each angle laid over top of each other at a low opacity. This is a great way to check for consistency, but if it's too confusing, at least lay those layers over top of each other periodically to check that things are consistent. If you do enough drawings and flip a symmetrical design horizontally, you could even animate your character turnaround. Now, making certain elements of a turnaround accurate may not actually contribute to the best look for the design. Think of Mickey Mouse's ears. They're perfect circles from every angle. A character's hairstyle might be a place where you aim for a more graphical read from every angle instead of accurate perfection. In 3D, specific shape keys are sometimes made for the face so that certain elements read stronger in profile than they would accurately. Make sure to make notes on these little things that might not add up, especially if you're handing this to someone else or to yourself if you have a bad memory. So here's the thing, even as a professional character designer myself, the amount of character turnaround sheets that I've made compared to characters I've designed is actually fairly small. And I think the reason for that is, even though they are important in a lot of contexts, like having reference for your comic or handing it off to another artist, character turns aren't necessarily the most compelling way to present your character to an audience. If I had a choice between sharing a new character from a stiff and accurate turn and showing them off in a great key pose in an illustration that's doing a little bit of storytelling, I'd always pick the latter. For most of the characters in this video, I got a handle on how to draw them consistently by drawing them a lot of times, not necessarily from turns. I think for some artists, seeing that these are a really necessary part of collaborative art projects like animation makes them feel like character turns are an official thing that they need to do in order to be or appear legitimate. But it's like business cards. They might be helpful for you, but don't just get them because it makes you seem more official. On the other hand, forgetting everything that I just said to dissuade you from doing these, they are a really helpful exercise to make sure you know what a character looks like with dimensionality, and it could help you problem solve if it seems like you just can't get certain poses and looks right. But I'd love to hear from you. Have you made character turns or sheets in the past, and what problems did you run into? You know, I've talked in the past about the importance of the 3 pillars of character design, being art, story, and design, but I already regret doing this. There are 2 more pillars just as important in this month's Biko's backpack. We've got a Harmona pillar, foil trading card, and a Cythera pillar, hard enamel pin. A Cythera is like those old harps with like 3 strings on them. You can get those in Biko's backpack over on patreon.com/bageldenizen, along with a personalized video critique of your work at a different higher tier. My course Learn Character Design at learncharacterdesign.com is over 18 hours of video learning. It's a comprehensive character design curriculum. And you can follow me at bageldenizen on Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun creating.